Can you imagine? Your own daughter wanting to kill you? I couldn't. Not in 70 years of living. But that's exactly what happened to me. In a cold hospital room, with nothing but the sound of machines keeping me alive. It was August 12th, 2024. I woke up to the hiss of oxygen, the steady beeping of a heart monitor, and the sharp sting of pain running through my chest. For a second, I thought I was already gone. The lights were blinding. The room was too quiet. Everything smelled like disinfectant and death. Then I realized I was still breathing. Barely. They said I had a minor stroke. Riverside General Hospital, Cedar Rapids, Iowa. I thought I'd be safe there. I thought family meant comfort. But that night, family meant fear. My daughter, Emily, came in. She looked like an angel walking into that room. Soft voice, tired eyes, and a smile that didn't quite reach her face. "Hey, Dad, I scared you." Her hand brushed my forehead. I tried to answer, but only a whisper came out. She smiled again. "Don't worry, just rest, okay? You'll be fine." I closed my eyes, pretending to sleep. That's when I heard her phone vibrate. She picked it up, whispered, "Yeah, babe, he's out cold. The nurse gave him something strong. Once he's gone, it's all ours." My heart froze. I wanted to believe I misheard, but she kept talking. "The inheritance covers the yacht. We'll be free, Marcus. I'll take care of it tonight." Take care of it. Those words cut deeper than the stroke ever did. My hands trembled under the blanket, but I didn't move. I couldn't let her know I was awake. A few minutes later, I heard the scrape of her chair, then the soft rustle of a pillow being lifted. She stood over me, her breathing shaky. "I'm sorry, Dad. I really am," she whispered. The pillow came down over my face. At first it was gentle, like she was tucking me in, then harder. The cotton pressed against my nose and mouth. I couldn't breathe. My chest screamed for air. The heart monitor went wild. Beep, beep, beep. Her voice cracked. "Please, Dad, to stop fighting, please." But I wasn't ready to die. Not like this. Not by her hands. My fingers brushed something under the blanket. The nurse call button. I pressed it twice. A faint chime echoed. Then the intercom buzzed. "Room 204, what's your emergency?" Emily froze. The pillow slipped from her hands. "Oh, my God," she cried. "He couldn't breathe. I was trying to help." The door burst open. Nurses, a doctor, chaos. They rushed to me, oxygen mask on, air flooding back into my lungs. I gasped, coughing, the room spinning. Her voice fading into the hallway. When I woke again, she was gone. But my phone, tucked under the blanket, had caught everything. Her voice, her plan, her betrayal. I replayed it once, her words echoing in my ears. "He's out cold, babe. Once he's gone, the inheritance is ours." I saved the file, backed it up to the cloud twice. Then I whispered to myself, "You picked the wrong old man, Emily." Morning came. She returned, eyes red, pretending to care. "Hey, Daddy," she said sweetly. "You feeling better?" I nodded. "A little." She smiled. "I was so worried about you." I looked at her. My little girl who once held my hand crossing the street, now the woman who tried to end me for money. I said softly, "You scared me too, sweetheart." She laughed nervously, not knowing the phone under the blanket was still recording. That night, I stared at the ceiling, listening to the faint hum of the machines keeping me alive. People think getting old makes you weak. They're wrong. Age doesn't make you weaker. It makes you patient. And patience is the deadliest weapon there is. She thought she could kill me for my money, but she forgot. I've spent my whole life surviving things that tried to destroy me. This time would be no different, because revenge belongs to those old enough to know how to wait.
You know, people always ask me, how could your own daughter do that to you? Truth is, evil doesn't start with murder. It starts small, quiet, like a weed that looks harmless until it strangles everything good you ever planted. And in my case, that weed had a name: Emily. She wasn't always like that. I still remember the day she was born. A storm rolling over Cedar Rapids, thunder shaking the barn roof, and me pacing the hospital floor with hands trembling like a schoolboy. When the nurse finally handed her to me, I looked down and saw these tiny fingers wrapping around mine. Her mother smiled through the pain and said, "She's gonna be your shadow, John." She was right. For years, Emily followed me everywhere: the fields, the tractors, the market in town. She'd ride on my shoulders while I fixed fences, ask me questions about the clouds, the cows, the smell of the soil after rain. I taught her to work hard, to earn what she wanted. Her mother passed when Emily was just a little girl. Aneurysm, sudden, no warning. After that, it was just us, father and daughter. And for a while, that was enough. But something changed when she left for college. The girl who once helped me bottle fresh milk on Sundays came back wearing designer clothes I couldn't pronounce, with a phone glued to her hand and a look in her eyes that I didn't recognize anymore. She'd talk about connections, about how the world wasn't built on hard work anymore. It was built on networking. I remember she laughed when I told her I'd rather own land and stocks. She said, "Dad, nobody cares about dirt anymore. Real money is online." I smiled, pretending not to care, but deep down, I felt that gap growing. A distance money builds between two people who once shared everything. Then one day she brought home a man, Marcus. He walked up my porch in a shiny gray suit, hair slicked back, wrist flashing some gold watch, and a grin that made my skin crawl. He said, "Pleasure to meet you, sir," reaching out a hand. His grip was soft, the kind that tells you the only thing he's ever lifted is a lie. I asked him what he did for a living. He said, "Entrepreneur." Now, that word, it's funny. In my day, it meant someone who works for themselves. Nowadays, it means someone who hasn't worked a day in their life but wants you to think they own the world. Marcus bragged about projects in Chicago, investors, crypto portfolios. But when I looked in his eyes, I saw nothing but hunger. Not ambition, greed, the kind that doesn't stop until it consumes everything around it. Emily was smitten, completely blind. She said he understood her dreams. She said he wanted to build a future together. I said, "Emily, he doesn't love you. He loves what you represent." She snapped back, "You don't know him like I do, Dad." Maybe not, but I knew men like him. I'd seen 'em before. They come dressed like success, but underneath they're just vultures waiting for something to die. Months passed. Emily started visiting less. Our phone calls got shorter. And every time we talked, she'd slip in a question about my will. "Dad, have you ever thought about, who'd handle things if you couldn't anymore? Or, what's the point of keeping that old land? You should retire, relax, let someone else take care of you." That someone, of course, was her. Pause. One afternoon, she came over with a folder. She said it was just paperwork, a power of attorney, she called it. Just in case, Dad, to help pay bills or make hospital decisions if you're ever sick. I smiled. "Sweetheart," I said, "I've been paying bills since you were born." She laughed, kissed my cheek, and said, "I just worry about you." But I could see the pressure in her eyes, that quiet desperation that only debt can carve into a person. I did some digging after she left. Called an old friend of mine, Roger, a banker down in Cedar Rapids. Told him to check a name for me, Marcus Kane. 2 days later, Roger called back. "John," he said, "you sure you want to know this?" I told him, "I already do. I just need confirmation." Marcus was broke. Not just broke, drowning. Over $250,000 in personal loans, crypto losses, unpaid taxes, and 2 pending lawsuits. I remember sitting on my porch that night, the sunset bleeding red over the cornfields, thinking about my daughter. The same little girl who once cried when a calf got lost, now tangled up with a man who saw her as a ticket out of ruin. That's when I made my choice. I wasn't going to confront her. No shouting, no arguing. That never works when love blinds the mind. Instead, I was going to watch, wait, and learn. Pause. For the next 6 months, I let her think I was slowing down. I acted confused sometimes, left the lights on, forgot my pills on purpose. I wanted her to believe I was becoming dependent, vulnerable. And it worked. She started visiting more, checking my mail, handling my accounts. Marcus started calling me Dad. That one nearly made me choke on my coffee. I played along, let them think they were winning. But behind the scenes, I was setting the board. See, I might live on a farm, but I'm not just some old fool. Since the 80s, I'd been quietly investing my crop profits into companies people laughed at back then. A little fruit company called Apple, a car company that promised electric dreams, Tesla, and a few pieces of farmland turned commercial lots. Every cent I ever earned, I planted somewhere smart. But I didn't flaunt it. Never told Emily, never told anyone. On paper, I was just old John Anderson, the farmer with 150 acres and a beat-up truck. In truth, I was worth more than Marcus's entire fantasy life combined. Pause. The funny thing about greed is it makes people impatient. And impatience, that's how they slip up. Emily started dropping hints more openly. "Dad, maybe you should move into a care home." Or, "You can trust me with your bank stuff. I know how complicated it gets." I nodded, pretended to struggle with the TV remote, while in reality I had cameras hidden in the living room, and every phone call she made was being backed up to a private cloud drive I'd set up myself. Then came the stroke. August 8th. It hit me hard. Numbness down my left side, dizziness, the world spinning like a merry-go-round gone wrong. I collapsed right on the porch. Next thing I remember, I woke up in that hospital bed with the machines beeping beside me. Now, most folks would call that a tragedy, but I call it timing. Because that stroke revealed more than any doctor ever could. It revealed who my daughter really was. When I heard her that night whispering into her phone about the inheritance, the yacht, the life they'd live after I was gone, it all clicked. Every fake smile, every "I love you, Dad," every signature she wanted, it all made sense. I wasn't just her father anymore. I was her payday. And Marcus, he wasn't just a boyfriend. He was the puppeteer holding her strings. But what they didn't know was that I had already prepared for this. I had a backup will that no one knew about, locked in a safety deposit box in town. It said that if I died under suspicious circumstances, all assets would freeze, every transaction traced, and everything transferred to charity until proven otherwise. Even my land couldn't be sold. So when Emily tried to kill me,
You might think the story ended with me lying there, gasping under that pillow. You'd be wrong. Because that night, when Emily pressed down on me like she wanted to snuff out my life, something inside me snapped. Not with anger, not with fear, but with clarity. I knew I had to survive, not just for myself, but to show her the consequences of blind greed. I can still feel it, the weight of the pillow on my face, her perfume mixing with the hospital disinfectant, her fingers trembling as she tried to hold me down. I couldn't move much. My left arm was weak from the stroke, my chest still shaking, but my right hand still had the strength of decades spent wrangling cattle, repairing barns, and hauling hay in the summer heat. And that hand shot up. It grabbed her wrist, strong, firm. She yelped, a sound I'll never forget. It was high-pitched, almost panicked. Her eyes went wide like a deer caught in headlights. "Oh, Dad, I was just adjusting it," she stammered. I kept my face still, mumbled incoherently, pretending I was too weak to speak, playing possum, the oldest trick in the book. Because while she thought I was slipping into unconsciousness, I was buying myself precious seconds that would save my life. Under the blanket, my other hand pressed the nurse call button, silently, carefully. I could hear her whispering to Marcus on the phone, telling him to stay calm and that everything was under control. I let her think I'd blacked out. I let her believe the stroke had finally done its job. And then The nurses arrived. The door burst open. Emily froze. Her face went pale. The pillow dropped from her hands. "What happened?" one nurse shouted. He couldn't breathe," Emily cried, stumbling back. I coughed, gasping for air, pretending to be disoriented. The oxygen mask went over my face. The steady hiss of life returning to my lungs never sounded sweeter. Pause. Emily ran, fled the room like a frightened animal. I stayed behind, pretending to recover slowly, letting her believe she'd won. But I had other plans. You see, while the nurses cleaned up the mess and monitored me, I pulled my phone from under the blanket. Every word she said, every sinister whisper, every greedy laugh was recorded in perfect clarity. I smiled as I saved the files. Encrypted, backed up, time-stamped. No chance of deleting or altering it. When I was discharged a week later, I walked out with a cane, wobbly and slow, exactly how Emily wanted me to look. She sent me texts, pretending to check in. "Dad, feel better? Don't overdo it." I replied innocently, "Thanks, Em. Feeling much better today." Little did they know, I had seen every message they sent each other, every plan they whispered, every greedy thought they assumed I'd never catch. You have to understand, they thought I was just an old farmer, weak, frail, slow, helpless, a man living off memories of crops and cows. But what they didn't know was that I had built an empire behind that humble facade, an empire they would walk straight into, blind to the truth. I spent decades quietly investing: tech stocks, real estate, trusts, offshore accounts. My farm was only a small part of my net worth. Everything else was hidden, shielded, untouchable. Marcus thought he was clever, showing off his fake wealth. Emily thought she was smart, manipulating her father. But both of them were walking straight into my trap. I let them think I was oblivious. I let them plan their post-dad lives, texting and gloating as if the inheritance were already theirs. "She's close, Marcus. He's so weak," Emily wrote. "Don't worry, babe. Soon everything will be ours." And I watched. Every word, every plan, every greedy thought they assumed I'd never catch. Pause. Emily thought she was plotting against an old man. She didn't know she was walking into the storm she had created. And Marcus thought he could manipulate me. He didn't know he had already lost the game. Pause. That's the beauty of truth hidden in plain sight. They never see it coming. And when the moment finally arrived, it would be explosive, unforgettable, and utterly poetic. Because sometimes the best revenge isn't about strength. It's about being smarter. It's about letting them believe they are winning, while quietly setting the stage for their complete downfall. And I was ready. The night Emily tried to kill me was just the beginning. Pause. The eyes that watched, the camera that recorded, and the calm, calculating mind of a 72-year-old farmer, all waiting for the perfect moment to strike. The storm was coming, and they had no idea it was headed straight for them.
You see, the thing about being underestimated is that it works in your favor. Emily and Marcus thought I was weak. They thought I was fragile. They thought I was nothing but an old man with a beat-up farm and fading memories. They couldn't have been more wrong. While they schemed, while they whispered about yachts and fancy condos, I had been quietly building a life they never saw. A life that didn't depend on corn or cattle. A life that didn't depend on who thought I was old, slow, or weak. Let me tell you what they didn't know. My farm, the one they thought was my only asset. Sure, it had value, maybe $750,000 if you only looked at land and livestock. But behind that simple farm life, I had invested every extra dollar from crops into tech stocks, secretly, quietly, for decades. Apple, Tesla, Microsoft, Amazon. Each one carefully chosen, nurtured, watched grow. I'd also quietly purchased real estate, rented, leased, and sold properties under anonymous LLCs, some in Chicago, some in New York, some even offshore, protected, hidden. By the time Emily and Marcus thought I was frail, my portfolio had quietly grown to $47 million. $47 million. And that wasn't the half of it. See, Marcus's so-called business empire? I owned 60% of it, through anonymous holdings, through trusts, through offshore companies no one would ever link to me. I'd bailed him out last year, watched him struggle, watched him brag to Emily about how he was going to take over the world. All the while, I owned him. Emily's fancy condo in the city, leased from one of my holding companies. Her high-paying job as a marketing executive, funded through a trust I controlled. Everything she touched, everything she thought was hers, was mine. And I let them believe they were in control. I let them plan, gloat, and scheme. I let them whisper into phones, thinking no one was listening. I recorded it all, every word, every plot, every greedy laugh. It was beautiful. Emily thought she was smart. Marcus thought he was clever. But they didn't understand one thing about old people like me. We don't need strength to win. We need patience. And we've spent a lifetime learning how to wait. I started small. Anonymous tips to the IRS about Marcus's tax evasion. Carefully timed leaks of hospital footage showing Emily's attempt on my life. I planted rumors in the right investor circles. Everything designed to unravel their world, quietly, efficiently, completely. I could see it already, the cracks forming, Marcus sweating over calls from panicked investors, Emily desperate, trying to convince him to calm down. They were unraveling, piece by piece. But the real beauty was watching them hit the final wall. Emily had no idea the will she wanted me to sign, the one that she thought would give her access to everything, was already irrelevant. I had rewritten it years ago, hidden it, protected it,
and it ensured that any attempt to steal from me would backfire completely. Marcus's crypto fortune? Gone. My anonymous investments drained every asset he had left. Every loan he had taken out using my inheritance as leverage collapsed. And Emily, my little girl, arrested for attempted murder, but not before I gave her a choice: sign away all inheritance rights, accept real-world consequences, and learn humility. Today, Emily works at a diner, flipping pancakes, learning the hard lessons life had tried to teach her. Marcus, deported, bankrupt, flipping burgers in a small town, trying to remember what real work feels like. And me? I still walk my fields. I still sip my coffee on the porch. I still feel the wind in my hair and the soil under my nails. But now I walk with something more than strength. I walk with wisdom. I walk with patience. I walk knowing that the world underestimates old men at their peril. And if there's one thing I've learned, it's that revenge, when served cold, paired with strategy, patience, and foresight, tastes sweeter than any victory you could achieve with anger alone. Emily and Marcus thought they could take everything from me. But in the end, I took back more than what was mine. I took back respect. I took back dignity. I took back the lesson of a lifetime that true power doesn't shout. It waits, it observes, and it strikes, quietly, perfectly, and without mercy. So, next time someone underestimates you, remember me. Remember the farmer, the man they thought was weak, the man who survived a stroke, betrayal, and greed, and came out richer, wiser, and victorious. Because in the end, the empire doesn't belong to the young, the flashy, or the greedy. It belongs to those who build it in silence and wait for the right moment to unveil it. You might think that the story ended when I exposed Emily and Marcus, when their empire of greed began crumbling under the weight of truth. But you'd be wrong, because the real moment, the true reckoning, was yet to come. And it wasn't violent. It wasn't loud. It wasn't about anger. It was about patience, planning, and the quiet, undeniable satisfaction of watching karma unfold. I spent weeks preparing for this day. Weeks ensuring that every loose thread in their lives would unravel at the perfect time. I reviewed the recordings, the emails, the texts, the secret accounts I had tracked for months. Every detail mattered. Every whispered plan, every greedy glance, every lie was a weapon in my hands. I could hear Emily and Marcus planning their engagement party in Chicago. A grand affair, chandeliers, caviar, and champagne, paid for with what they thought were her savings, but were in truth disguised funds from my own allowance. They believed the world was theirs. They believed I was still a weak, frail old man. They believed I had no idea. So I made my decision. I would attend the party, uninvited, frail, cane in hand,
But I wouldn't come empty-handed. I would bring proof. I would bring the truth. I would bring justice. The night arrived. The venue was swanky, chandeliers glittering, the scent of roses and perfume in the air. Guests in tuxedos and gowns, laughing, sipping champagne, oblivious to the storm that was about to hit. Emily floated through the crowd like a queen, radiant, laughing, completely unaware of the trap closing around her. Marcus was there, smug as ever, shaking hands, patting shoulders, basking in the illusion of power. I watched from the corner, quietly, pretending to struggle with my cane, every breath measured, every step calculated. And then the moment came. I signaled my lawyer, who followed discreetly behind me. We approached the stage where the couple stood, center of attention, smiling for the cameras. I cleared my throat weakly and raised my hand for silence. All eyes turned to me. Emily froze. Marcus's grin faltered. I smiled softly, the kind of smile that hides storms. "Ladies and gentlemen," I began, my voice calm, deliberate, almost serene. "Tonight is supposed to be a celebration, but before we toast to their future, there's something you all need to see." A hush fell over the room. Curious eyes turned toward the large screen behind the stage. I pressed a button on my phone. The video began to play. Her voice, clear as day, whispering into the phone. "Once he's gone, it's ours, babe. The inheritance, the yacht, everything." The footage shifted, her pressing the pillow against my face in the hospital room, my hand reaching up, catching hers, my other hand pressing the nurse call button. Gasps erupted throughout the room. I watched as Emily's face drained of color, Marcus's jaw slack. "Dad, I can explain," she cried, stumbling toward me. I shook my head gently. "No, Emily, this is not about excuses. This is about truth." A hush fell over the room. Curious eyes turned toward the large screen behind the stage. I continued, my voice calm, deliberate, almost serene. "This is the person who tried to take my life for money. This is the man who encouraged it. And this," I said, pointing to the video, "is proof of their intentions." Emily's lips quivered. Marcus's confident mask crumbled. They had no words, no plan, no allies. Because all along I had anticipated this moment. Every detail had been prepared, every trap laid months ago, ready to snap. A slow breath. Anonymous tips to the IRS had triggered audits on Marcus's business. Investors had pulled back. Bank loans had been frozen. Their wealth, their plans, their imagined future, crumbling before their eyes. The chaos was intoxicating. I stood there, cane in hand, watching the empire of greed disintegrate. And I felt nothing but calm, nothing but quiet satisfaction. Emily was escorted out by security, screaming and pleading. Marcus was left behind, trying to salvage what little dignity remained.
It was poetic justice, perfect, unstoppable. And yet, I didn't want vengeance through violence. I didn't want to destroy them in ways that would make headlines for the wrong reasons. No, I wanted them to learn, to face consequences, to understand the weight of their choices. Emily now works at a diner. She flips pancakes and serves coffee. She learns humility, patience, and the value of honest work. Marcus, deported, bankrupt, trying to rebuild a life with nothing but his own hands and sweat. And me, I returned to my farm, to the land that had always been mine, to the life I had built quietly, secretly, and wisely. I sip my coffee on the porch each morning, watch the sunrise over the fields, and remember every step of the journey, every betrayal, every whisper, every lesson. Because here's what I've learned in 72 years. Greed exposes people. Betrayal teaches patience. And true power is quiet, deliberate, and patient. Revenge doesn't have to be violent. It doesn't have to be loud. It doesn't have to be immediate. It can be strategic, calculated, perfect. I let Emily and Marcus think they were winning. I let them plan, scheme, and gloat. And then I watched, and I struck. And the best part is, they never saw it coming. Because the world underestimates old men. They underestimate patience. They underestimate wisdom. And they underestimate the quiet strength that comes from a lifetime of experience. I'm 72 years old. I survived a stroke. I survived betrayal by my own daughter. I survived greed, deceit, and lies. And I came out stronger, richer, wiser, and victorious. So if you take one thing away from my story, it's this. Never underestimate the quiet. Never underestimate the patient. Never underestimate the ones who build empires in silence. And if my story spoke to you, I share tales like this every day. Stories of wise men, survival, and lessons learned the hard way. So make sure to subscribe, like, and leave a comment. I want to hear from you. What's the most shocking, unbelievable family betrayal you've ever witnessed? Drop it below, and the wildest story will get a special shout-out in tomorrow's tale. Because life is full of lessons, and the stories we share are how wisdom survives.